it 6 people? 13. Okay. All right, thank you everyone. I think we have hopefully everyone logged in at this point, so we're gonna get started. My name is Miho Laguerre. I'm the Research and Fellowship Coordinator here at California Sea Grant, and with me I have Shauna O, our Director, and Catherine Poirier, who is our Extension and Program Analyst. Okay, so just to let folks know that this information in the presentation is accurate as of today. However, the timeline and details of this request for proposals contained herein are subject to change, and so any changes that may occur will be posted on our webpage. And so there's the URL link right there. And as you're working on the application and the letter of intent, we encourage you to refer to the request for proposals itself when preparing for your application and not solely rely on the information in this presentation. So the webinar objectives are to provide a brief overview of California Sea Grant and the National Sea Grant Network. And then we will also describe in detail the request for proposals and then go over any important application components and tips for preparation. And finally, we want to have the opportunity to have you ask any questions that you may have as you are working on your letter of intent. And throughout the presentation, we're going to have dedicated question and answer sessions. And so we'll open that up to everyone. And so a few housekeeping rules. You all are currently muted during the presentation. During these designated questions and answer session, please use the chat dialog, which is preferred, or unmute yourself by clicking the mute icon or *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. And then also, once we talk to you, please make sure you mute yourself since there are a number of you on this webinar right now. And the recording of the presentation will be made available on that request for proposal webpage later today or tomorrow. And if you have really specific questions that you think will be directed just about your project, then please email us directly at sgproposal@ucsd.edu. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our director, Shauna, who's going to give a little bit of background about the National Sea Grant Program as well as California Sea Grant.
So yeah, so many of you already know this, but I wanted to just remind you that Sea Grant is a federal and state partnership between NOAA and 33 university-based programs in every coastal and Great Lakes state, Puerto Rico, and Guam. For over 50 years, Sea Grant has supported coastal communities through its programming and research, extension, education, and workforce development and communication. And the resources that our network, including our program, provides include grant and fellowship opportunities for scientists and graduate students, complete grant administration services, including proposal solicitation and review, and post-award fiscal management and administration. And then we have extension specialists, so the outreach, dedicated to impartial research and outreach for coastal stakeholders, as well as media and library services that's provided through our national headquarters, and then of course a connection to the nationwide network of Sea Grant experts and partners, and actually with other NOAA entities. As part of extension, so what makes Sea Grant a little bit different is that on top of being a funding agency, we also have extension, which help and work with communities within, actually in coastal counties. So for our program in California, we have professionals, extension specialists. They're called coastal specialists from Eureka all the way down to San Diego. And how they work and what they do, sort of you see in that slide, or the pictures, that they identify emerging marine resource challenges and opportunities, often win partnership with people that they work with, partners including researchers at their respective marine institutes, marine labs, and academic institutions. They conduct applied research to address challenges And they collaborate with other academics, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other partners. And they translate shared discovery to everyone at the table. So that's the word, the extension comes from extending that information, whether that's one that they generated themselves or with in conjunction and partnership with others to the users that would need that information to make decisions or better utilize resources and whatnot. So you can see sort of the focus areas mirror that of our program-wide strategic plan, which is education, healthy coastal marine ecosystem, resilient coastal ecosystems, and then safe and sustainable fisheries and seafood supply. So for the awards for this particular composition would range anywhere from 25 to 80,000. It's capped at 80,000 this year. And then the duration project is for 2 years, but we will also definitely are open to entertaining 1-year requests. And then we hope to fund 11 to 14 projects, again, contingent upon receiving the funds from NOAA, but also based on the project budget that the PIs propose, applicants propose. So we are asking and having this option of providing additional 20,000 dedicated to a specific outreach or communication project that we hope you will utilize either existing partners or consider using the services that could be provided by our own communications team, but also the extension coastal specialists that I just spoke to you about. And those seeking funds for graduate students, please encourage the students to apply for the Graduate Research Fellowship, which is the other competition that's happening in conjunction with this one. So for this year, separate traineeships will not be awarded through the grants that you'll be getting for this competition. And then just going back a little bit to about the extra 20K is that the idea is that this would be communicating your research results and work with a specific group of stakeholders or the general public. And then you're, again, I said, to encourage to work with our extension specialists early on in the development of the proposal to seek feedback or advice and potentially partner on the project. So I think going back, when you go back to our website, you want to look at where your nearest extension specialist. But for this particular call, we have an aquaculture specialist. I'm sorry, let me go back. We have an aquaculture specialist housed at Moss Landing, and some of you may already know Paul Olin, who's based out of Santa Cruz. He will be retiring in June. So if you have projects that you would have typically, talk to Paul about, I would ask you and encourage you to reach out to Luke Gardner. So I don't know if you see my cursor. Here's Luke and here's Paul. Okay. So the priorities research topic area for this call is targeting our sustainable fisheries and aquaculture goal 2, which is to provide science-based information to support and grow a sustainable California aquaculture industry to help meet the growing demands for seafood and minimize negative socioeconomic and environmental impacts of aquaculture. So I believe our RFP clearly outlines some other resources, including the National Sea Grant Strategic Plan, the NOAA 10-year aquaculture vision, as well as our own that has specific strategies and goals that I encourage you to look for in terms of whether your ideas fit. So this came up in our last webinar. So just because your idea doesn't specifically map onto a strategy or goal, don't be discouraged. Those are ideas and texts. It's not to be prescriptive, but as ways to give you ideas on what a particular project that would meet that strategy might look like or a goal. So I encourage you, if you're not sure, if you don't see your particular research idea directly map onto language that you see in those 3 documents, if it falls within larger aquaculture research, I encourage you to email us if you're not sure. And let me see. Okay, so I want to just tell you briefly why this year we're focusing on aquaculture. So some of you who are online have seen sort of a more general calls in the past. And the reason we're focusing on aquaculture is that this spring, you may have seen there was a large amount of money from the National Sea Grant Program, $12 million worth of aquaculture-related research. And so we saw a lot of demand from the community on wanting to do aquaculture research. And on top of that, our headquarters, which is the National Sea Grant Program, has provided set aside $3 million to co-fund highly rated research projects, meaning if we fund $1 million of aquaculture research and they're highly rated, they would theoretically provide us another $500,000, which will come back to our program to help us do other aquaculture programming, not just limited to research, but that we can use for outreach and communications. So that's what we're relying on, and we're looking to the larger academic and industry partners to help us get the needed research that NOAA and National Sea Grant and our program really cares about and would like to invest in for this particular cycle of funding.
Hi guys, this is Catherine. So within this priority topic area of goal 2, there are a couple of priorities that will be given to projects that emphasize these following 2 things. The first is the creation or support of jobs and businesses. And we're defining a job or business created as a new position or firm created and filled as a result of sea grant activities. And a job or business supported here for our purposes is going to be defined as an existing filled position or firm that is supported as a direct result of sea grant activities. And so I just wanted to have a quick note to say that this category will not include jobs where people are hired on a project as volunteers, directly supported staff, sea grant trainees, or fellows. And this should also not include employment funded directly from the Sea Grant Award, and this includes match. So just to give a couple examples, an example of where this would be successfully counted is a Sea Grant funded researcher worked with the owner of a small oyster aquaculture farm to develop a new protocol for producing feed for larval oysters. Because of this work, the farm was able to sell their product at a competitive price and hire on a full-time employee to produce the feed. So this is an example of a job that was specifically created because of work that a Sea Grant funded researcher did. And without that work, they would not have been able to hire that employee. And so the next example is one where a position is, somebody is hired to fill a position, but it's not because of the work done on the project. So a Sea Grant funded researcher was able to hire an additional graduate student to work in their lab because of the funding they received from California Sea Grant. So this is a direct result of the money that is awarded, and so we can't include that example. So the second priority area is work done with a resource economist to quantify the economic impact or benefit of the proposed research project and its societal implications. And so just to define these words, economic impact is defined as the net change to the economic base of a region that either creates or keeps revenue in a given economy that would not exist or leave the region otherwise. And so some examples of this include creating jobs, saving an entity money, and generally helping to drive up revenue in a region. We're defining economic benefit as the net increase in social welfare through market or non-market forces. And so an example of this is enhanced recreation that comes about as the result of a project, the value of increased knowledge or skills, or some type of value that's associated with something such as improved water quality. So ecosystem services fall within economic benefit. And societal implications are defined here as the consequences for society as a whole and for a particular group of people. So this relates to things such as enhanced ability to adapt to change. So moving on to the example, so an example of this being successfully done within a project is California Sea Grant funded researcher worked with the local aquaculture farm to identify a new crab species for aquaculture production. The farm successfully raised the new crab species and was able to sell it to local markets. Production of this new species was more efficient than a previous crab species that was raised and sold, which saved the farm $500,000 a year. So this is an example of research done by a Sea Grant funded researcher that has created a benefit to the economy and has saved money by being more efficient. I know that these two kind of areas have a lot of definitions associated with them, and they can be kind of particular. So if anybody has specific questions of how they feel their project might relate to these two, you're more than welcome to send me an email. And then I guess generally, are there any questions from anyone at the moment?
Feel free to chat any of your questions or press *6 to unmute yourself. Anyone? Okay, sounds good. We'll just keep moving forward then, and feel free to ask us questions at a later point. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk more about the application itself, and so the eligibility. So you are eligible to submit a letter of intent and a proposal if you are a faculty and academic staff from university and scientists from research institutions throughout California. You may submit more than one letter of intent if you have multiple project ideas. You can also submit a full proposal for every letter of intent you provide, but please note that only one award will be made to the PI. And also, only those who submitted a letter of intent may submit a full proposal. So application requirements, the first thing is a letter of intent, which will be due June 21st by 5 p.m. Please submit it to sgproposal@ucsd.edu. And this is just a short 2-page letter that will have your name and contact information, the title of the project, a brief discussion of the focal and topic and approach, and then an approximate funding to be requested. This will help us gauge the number of applications that we plan on receiving, as well as figure out who we should invite and also have on our review panel. And the required application elements, should you submit a full proposal, there's 10 main components to it. But the first one's a title page, which you can download on our website right now, a project summary, a project narrative, data management and sharing plan, an environmental compliance questionnaire, which is also downloadable on our website, budgets and budget justification, CVs, current and pending support, proposed sources of matching funds, and optional support letters. So if some people are new to Sea Grant, what's unique about our funding is that we require a 50% match, which is a federal law. So every $2 requested, you must match $1. So if you have any questions regarding match, please direct those questions to our associate director. You can email her at sgbudget@ucsd.edu. And for folks that haven't registered in eSea Grant within the past year, please create a new account in eSea Grant, and that you won't have access to this full proposal submission portal until after the letter of intent deadline. You'll get it a day or two afterwards, and this is just so that we know that folks that have submitted a letter of intent can submit a full proposal. And for someone who didn't submit a letter of intent, you won't be able to submit an application. So at this point, we'll turn it over to questions again, and it looks like we might have one. So a question is, are nonprofit organizations eligible? So
I don't think there's a cap.
yeah. So if you're a nonprofit and a research institution, or you're doing research, then you would be eligible. Any other questions? Okay. So we will move right along and probably finish under the hour, which is totally fine. So moving on to more about the selection criteria and then tips regarding the application process. The 6 key things we're looking at when we review your application is rationale, scientific merit and impact or outreach quality, the innovativeness of the project, programmatic justification, practical impact and user relationship, and relationship to Sea Grant priorities. The review process, all the applications will be reviewed by California Sea Grant technical staff and the Sea Grant committee. So these are the outside panelists selected for disciplinary expertise. In addition to this technical panel, each proposal will be reviewed by the Resources Agency Sea Grant Advisory Panel, or RASGAP, and these are experts employed by the state resources agencies, and they help identify research priorities based on state needs. So in addition to, the technical merit of your science that will be judged by the technical panel, the resources agency RASGAP panel will also look at the science, but also kind of give us more input on what exactly the state wants to see in aquaculture, in the field of aquaculture. And so once we get scores from both panels, the California Sea Grant Management Team and director will ultimately make the final recommendation regarding approval of proposals for funding. Moving on to kind of tips and big pictures of the proposal. So be aware of deadlines. We cannot accept any late letters of intent or proposals. For the full proposal in Sea Grant, the whole system will shut down at 5. And so even if you're a minute or two late, you won't be able to submit an application. So I would encourage you to register early and start your application early. And try to hook the reviewers quickly, so your project summary and introduction are key. And so what makes a great introduction is what's the problem and why is it important, what's known, what's not known, why is it important to know, what will you address, what are the important unknowns, and what questions will you be answering, and how will your research be used and who will use it. Moving on to more tips. So make sure you read the proposal application instructions very carefully and follow them exactly. Assume that you're writing for a reviewer in a somewhat related field rather than for an expert directly in your area. So try to avoid using a bunch of jargon. If you use acronyms, make sure you define them early on. And also polish your proposal extensively. Please have it well focused, well organized, clear, and accurate, free of errors. So copy and pasting errors, spelling, typos, grammar, budget numbers. So ultimately, a successful proposal will be a joy to read and stand out from the competition. A few common errors that we see from time to time is that, one, a proposal doesn't fit with the purpose of the RFP or address priority topic areas. So for instance, if this proposal that's submitted is not related to aquaculture, unfortunately, there's probably a chance that you will not get funded, most likely. The broader impacts is missing, so we're really focused on applied research, and so seeing how this will advance the aquaculture sector. And then sometimes we see proposals that have inadequate expertise in the partnership and strength of relationship isn't identified. Furthermore, we might see proposals that are too ambitious, that promise too much for too little money or time, and it's not realistic. So, there's all these great deliverables promised, but in the limited time or money that they're asking, the reviews feel like it might be just set up to fail because they're trying to do too much in that scope of time. Sometimes there's not enough detail, or it's unclear for the research methods, and there's inadequate detail to determine the likelihood of success. And sometimes we see that sections are just copy and pasted from different applications that maybe it's been used in the past, or someone else is working on a different submission, and it's pretty noticeable. And also we see that, there's teams working on the proposal, and you can tell that it's written by multiple people just because it doesn't flow as well. So please take the time to really structure and edit your proposal. So with that being said, the main thing that we just want to make sure that you all know is the timeline, and that you submit your application on time so that we can accept it. And so here is the timeline. So the letter of intent is due June 21st. Your full proposals will be due August 8th. The review process will take place from August to October of this year. And then around October, you will know if you are recommended for funding, and then you can plan for your projects to start in February of next year. So with that, that is pretty much our presentation. So are there any questions? You can press *6 to unmute yourself. You can also chat. Few more seconds. Do you have any finishing remarks, Jana? Since oh wait, there's one. Okay, let's see. One person says, I appreciate the specific examples of the 2 priorities, but can you explain the role of the resource economist in the second example you gave? And I will turn it over to Catherine because she is our analyst.
Hi. Yeah, that is a great question. So the role of the research, economics and valuing benefits and impacts from research projects is very complicating and not easily done. And so anytime you're trying to produce some type of valuation, we really suggest that you work with a resource economist, because that's going to be the method that will give you kind of the best and closest answers to what a real value would be. And so the example that is asked about is the one where a Sea Grant funded researcher is working with an aquaculture farm to identify new crab species for aquaculture production. And so basically, if you were to work with the resource economist here, they would ideally have information from the aquaculture farm on, I guess, kind of the profits of the different species and where money was saved. And so basically, this is an example of a new species being more efficient. And so because of this efficiency, they are saving the aquaculture farm money. So basically, just any work done with a resource economist is just to make sure that the correct values are being used, because it's not just simply as easy as looking at profit from year 1 to year 2 and calling that difference the economic benefit. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, but if you have further questions, I can send out my email address and we can, oh, yes, it did. Okay, great.
Great, thanks. So the next question is, what kind of expenses may be included in the budget? Are there any expenses that are not allowed? So in general, what can be included in the budget is salary, travel, equipment, your typical cost. Anything that isn't allowed, do you have an example? Or you can email sgbudget@ucsc.edu if you have specific questions, if you're worried about something not being able to be covered by this research award. Do you have any?
Supplies.
Supplies, yeah, we'll cover supplies. But no graduate trainee. We won't cover that for this round. Karen, you say that my institution has a federally negotiated indirect cost rate. May we use that rate on both the Sea Grant budget and the matching budget? Yes. Yes. Yeah. And again, yeah, if you already have a federally negotiated IDC, then yeah, you can use that. And you can work with Rose or Carol, both of their contact informations on the big PDF of the request for proposals. So feel free to contact them if you have further questions. Okay, Brant asks, can you expand on the communication outreach capacities that California Sea Grant possesses that may be relevant to the possible 20,000 edition?
So yes, so Luke Gardner is our aquaculture specialist, and one of his roles is to help extend or provide outreach specifically to the aquaculture industry. So he is aware of, or he is known by most of aquaculture entities in the state. So if there's a specific company or industry or a particular group of aquaculturists that you're trying to target with your research, Luke could help you do that. You guys, he could help you as part of a team to do a specific extension component where there is something, again, information that gets translated or synthesized so that it could be more easily used by a particular group, whether that is an industry or a government agencies or any other relevant group that he could help you with. And then there is also our own in-house, we have a communications team of 3 that, depending on what you would like to do with your research, again, it would be project specific. Our communications team could potentially be part of your project to help communicate and disseminate and potentially synthesize the information that you would have to take to a particular stakeholder you have in mind. Again, those are suggestions. There are ways you could do outreach apart from our group, but outside of Luke, we have, you might be very familiar with, given the location that you might be at, we have coastal specialists that have aspects of their programming in aquaculture, including our social scientist, Carrie Pomeroy. So Joe Tiberzi has some programming in aquaculture, as does Teresa Talley, who's in San Diego, as well as Carrie Culver in Santa Barbara. And then again, I mentioned Carrie Pomeroy, who is in Santa Cruz. And then also, if you have, I guess, hatchery related, potentially with salmon, Mariska has a program up in Santa Rosa. Again, you'd have to find out what it is that you think that the extension specialist can provide for you or can do with you. So that's what the extra amount would be, is to help us. It's our attempt to try to help integrate and have the research being done by the research community better inform and feed some of the activities that our extension specialists are doing, and vice versa. So it's to help cross pollinize, and to really also working with potentially your students who would have the traineeship or the fellowship funded in a separate mechanism. Hope that helps.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk to us or chat.
So can we highlight those people? Do we have the extension people all listed?
Yes, so the extension people that Shauna just mentioned, it's on the last page of the PDF of the request for proposals. It's on page 14. All their phone numbers, email is on there, and it also has their area of expertise. So feel free to reach out to them if you have ideas that you want to partner with them for. Great. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to be on this informational webinar. We'll get the slides and the recording of the presentation on our website later today or tomorrow, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. And thanks so much. We look forward to receiving your letters by June 21st. Take care. Bye.